Hi, it's Jen Taub. Welcome back to Booked Up, a podcast that features you, me, and our favorite authors. We have a very special day today on Booked Up. It's our April book club, and our selection is your book. You're the author. It's you. Today, we are talking about how books get proposed, sold, written, edited, published, and promoted. It's kind of like back in 2006 when Time magazine announced their Person of the Year. On the cover of that issue of Time was a drawing of a large desktop computer. In the center of the monitor was a reflective surface that functioned as a mirror. If you picked up the magazine in the supermarket checkout line, you would see yourself. In case you missed it, the text above the computer read, Person of the Year. And on the mirror-like surface was the word you. So, my guests today talking about your book are literary agent Jill Marr and book club regular publicist Ivan Lett. Jill is a literary agent at the Sandra Dijkstra Literary Agency. She looks for nonfiction by authors with a big, timely, smart message. Jill represents many names you would recognize, including Dr. Jennifer Gunter, author of the bestseller, The MENOPAUSE Manifesto. Jill is always looking for fiction and nonfiction by unrepresented voices, BIPOC and Latinx writers, disabled persons, and people identifying as LGBTQ+. She loves food-centric novels, no matter what the genre. Ivan, who is a regular on Booked Up Book Club episodes, is a New York-based marketing, publishing, and communications professional, poet, and freelance writer. He advises nonfiction authors and researchers on strategies for print and digital publication. Ivan is currently a publicity manager at Basic Books, a publishing house founded in 1950 that has released award-winning books in history, science, sociology, psychology, politics, and current affairs. Oh, and one more thing. Jill is my literary agent who landed me an incredible deal with Viking Press for Big Dirty Money. And I also have a connection to Ivan. When he was at Yale Press, he worked on digital marketing for my first book, Other People's Houses, about the 2008 toxic mortgage-linked financial crisis. Let's dive in. Hey, so good to see both of you together in one Zoom room.
Indeed.
Good to be here.
Maybe you should introduce each other because I don't know if you've actually met in real life.
I don't believe we have.
No, not in real life. I see Jill's name on papers that are memos that are circulated from time to time, and that's been the case for much of the past 15 years or so. But never putting it.
What kind of memos? This sounds really secretive. I don't get
no, not at all. These are acquisitions memos from book editors who are looking to acquire books from agents and the authors that they represent.
Oh, so you've been a player for
so
years.
Ominous. And I also have a basic author who is going to be hopefully on your list. His name is Frank Guridy. And he is an amazing historian out of Columbia, and he's writing a book on the American Coliseum.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I think it's, next summer?
He just turned it in. So,
okay, yeah. Yep, so that sounds about right.
Wait, what did you say, the American Coliseum?
Yeah, it's called Between Conflict and Community, and it's about American Coliseums and how they are involved with social justice and a community place. It's really going to be great.
Are they sports or entertainment generally, or what is it about?
All of the above.
Oh, can we book this person? When is this going to be though? Next. Just kidding.
Yes, of course. It'll come out next year. And he was on a panel at the OAH a couple weeks ago in Los Angeles, and he's a rock star. So
I don't know. If you all know, how far back you know each other. You probably know each other farther back than I do. I met Jill, I think, for the first time in the spring of 2019, because you became my agent, full disclosure. And then, Ivan, you worked at Yale Press when my first book came out. And then you were headed up to, I think, get a master's at Columbia shortly after that. Is that kind of the right timing, or?
Let me think.
Because my book came out 2014.
No, I had finished my master's at that point. I know what it was. I had to leave almost just before your book went on sale because I got a new job in the city, so I could stop commuting from New Haven to New York 3 times a week.
Oh, so you always lived in the city. You weren't living in New Haven. I get it.
I lived in New Haven for about 2 years after I graduated, and it was just not a place for me to be in my 20s, particularly with all my friends gone. So
yeah.
I schlepped over to New York and then went back and forth for 5 years.
And Jill, you're in Southern California.
Yes, San Diego.
And where's your dog?
He is roaming the house right now.
Wait, what is his name again? He has a human
Kevin.
name. Kevin. Kevin is really cute. And Ivan has a dog as well. But my dog, I don't know where he was. Oh, there he is. Ponzo is asleep on the floor at the door. I feel like we should have a special booked up episode just with dogs barking, or maybe not. People get upset when that happens. Okay, this has nothing to do with anything. But I want to bring you both together because I meet a lot of people who love books, who listen to the podcast, and are thinking about themselves writing a book. In particular, most people I know are thinking about nonfiction, some fiction, and these worlds are extremely different. And, some of the folks who reach out to me, I send Jill's way, and they have conversations and so on. But I think what I'm hoping that we can kind of go through a little bit is, maybe for loss of a better metaphor, the life cycle of a nonfiction book, because people, when they listen to this, podcast, it's you, me, and our favorite authors, but the book is already completed. And what they don't realize, I think, because I don't usually ask that much about it, is like, when did this actually start? Like, I often get into people's backgrounds and like, who were the people in their lives that motivated them, and I think about, I dig deeply into the structure of the book and its message, but sort of the behind the scenes before the book became a book is what I want to talk with you about. And maybe I want to start with you, Jill, because you're there. Maybe, given that Ivan comes in, about the books when they're acquired, but you're coming into the process after the book is acquired and sort of the process inside the publishing house. Maybe, Jill, you want to kind of start with, how writers write nonfiction books and maybe some of the myths that people have about how to write a book and how to sell a book and all of that. Somehow I don't hear you. Ivan, can you hear?
Am I back?
You're back. Oh, good.
Sorry.
No problem.
There was a plane going over and I muted and I forgot.
Okay.
Rookie podcaster.
It's so good, though. I love that.
Don't think I'm a pro.
So typically, when it comes to nonfiction especially, we get a lot of referrals. And Jen, I always thank you for the amazing people you send me. And I also tend to... I do a lot of outreach too, either via social media or, like, for instance, I was just watching this documentary on Netflix once about the Sicily Hotel, or that crazy hotel in LA where there's the disappearing woman, and they had just a little bit about it on Skid Row, and they interviewed this Skid Row historian, and I was like, that guy should write a book. I mean, he's the only Skid Row historian. I need that book. So I approached him and I said, hey, do you want to write a book? And he said, yeah, that would be fun. And so at that point, we put together a book proposal.
Well, let me just stop right there. Like, so what's really interesting is part of what multimedia, whether it's like you said, Twitter or a documentary, you're watching. And if you're like, heck, Skid Row historian, write a book. Like, you're actually, when you're having fun, in the back of your mind or the front of your mind, you're like scouting. You're like You're like the college coach who's watching little league games, right? You're looking for talent everywhere.
Absolutely.
Okay, continue.
Yeah. So then we just got to work on putting together a book proposal and the basic idea, what would be a commercial concept that would be appealing to a wide audience. And I personally love book proposals. I love writing them. I love editing them. I think if they're done well, they could almost be their own genre. They're just really fun to read. And so,
can you stop there? Because people don't know. Some people have done this before, but the sort of the anatomy of a book proposal or whatever I don't want you to give away your secret sauce, but generally speaking, what you mean by a book proposal.
Oh, right. Yeah. So the book proposal. So I think a lot of people also do not know that when we sell nonfiction books, they are very rarely complete manuscripts.
And sell them, you don't mean to the public, you mean sell them to a big publishing house.
To sell them to a publishing house, yeah. And so we put together what the author is proposing this book will be like and about. And it really is just all the components, how they think they're going to be able to sell it, what makes it different, comparison titles,
is there any writing? I mean, is there like a sentence, a tweet, a paragraph, a few pages, a chapter? Like, what do you have to give?
Yeah, usually there's sample writing. That's important, unless this person is someone who, I also, if I'm reading an op-ed, or, in the New York Times, and I'm like, oh, this person looks interesting. There could be a book here. And so if there's not necessarily time to put together any chapters or anything, we'll use op-eds or other writing samples.
Mm-hmm. And you say, I know I want to get you into the next thing, but you say not time to put something together. There's always time, but I get the sense that sometimes a topic is hot and you want to strike while the iron is hot. Is that what's going on there?
Right. Yes, exactly. If something is really timely, if everybody's talking about it in the news, if this person is really hot, I approached one of the DC cops right after. Oh, you know him. But he ended up signing with someone else. But I was like, okay, we would want to get this together right away. Mm-hmm. So like for instance, that is something that
you mean one of the Capitol
January
Police officers,
6 guys.
One of the January 6 officers who were at the Capitol. So that there was a moment there, and then okay, so you get the proposal together that's going to have information about the book, who the audience is, comparable titles to see, how it's similar or different from other things that have been out there. And then you take that, you put it all together, and how do you know what to do with it next? Like, what do you do?
And then I approach editors who I know in the industry who I think would be good fits for not only the project but the author, because as you know, when you're shopping, we want to make sure that we make a good match between editor and author. And so that's a big part of it too. As I'm reading a project, I'm always thinking, oh, what editor would love this and who can I send it to? And,
And so that's the thing though, I know some editors, they might move around, some people retire, they're new people. So you are trying to look for a good fit, because I like that. I'm not obviously an acquisitions editor, but even running a podcast, I like when people are approaching me. I like to choose my own books, but sometimes someone will pitch me on a book and I'm like, oh, that really fits. But sometimes I get like someone sends me what looks like it's not even as like dear. It's like there's not even my name on it, or it has my name and it says Dear Miss Taub. Like, and then it's pitching like fantasy fiction. It's like, this is a nonfiction, like, so I think it's good that you only approach people. You don't just like send a proposal out to 5,000 people, right? You're carefully selecting.
Yeah. Because every time I send the proposal out, I'm sending my name out with it. So if you did that, and I know there are agents who probably, do the spaghetti on the wall thing, but if you do that, editors are less and less likely to open your email next time they hear from you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you send this out. And so I think like every process is different. Sometimes and we're talking about someone writing a nonfiction book and going to an agent. I want to rewind a little bit. Like, you gave the example of you reaching out to someone and working with them. I know there used to be books, and there probably still are, people now look online, these books about how to find an agent, right? And there are these, like, the literary marketplace, and there's like thousands of agents or whatever. It's really hard, though, if you're getting cold calls or approached. Does that work for people to do that? I mean, how would somebody who doesn't have an agent get one? And does every nonfiction writer need an agent in order to sell their book proposal?
Not all nonfiction authors need, especially if you're just going to go directly to maybe a university press or something like that. But it is good to have an agent, I think, no matter what, because they're going to look over your contract and make sure that your splits are industry standard, that you're getting, they're not taking all the rights away from you. Like, you can have your own option to try to, we can go into this later, skipping way ahead, but like film rights and things like that. So it's really important to have an agent just in general. The best way to find, I think a lot of people find us through social media. There's a hashtag manuscript wish list, which is MSWL. I feel like I get a lot of,
so say that again. Hashtag
MSWL.
So manuscript wish list. Because MS is the shorthand people use for manuscript, even though it's one word. Okay, got you.
And so then, if I get an interesting idea, I'll pop it up on Twitter or something and hashtag manuscript wish list. And sometimes people, and then they usually query us through Query Manager. That's how we do it. But there's also Query Tracker, and people can really look and see how responsive agents are. And there's so many little feelers out there. I feel like it's easier to do your outreach now than ever before.
Is there ever, so like you could find somebody, or they could find you, and you might think an idea is really promising. Do people ever who dream of being a writer just sort of drop off the face of the earth at that point because they can't do the proposal, or they get freaked out? Or do most people that you work with get that proposal out the door? I mean, what's your attrition rate?
There's probably like 95% of the time we are talking about a proposal, they'll be able to write one up.
Oh, that's
but there are the few who just get really intimidated, and maybe this isn't for me. And it is not for everyone. I mean, writing an entire manuscript, that's daunting. And some people are really good at writing, articles or doing the sprint, but that's the marathon. And so not everyone can do it.
That's true. Okay, so now I'm switching to you for a second, Ivan, because at this point, I don't know how much, you work at Basic Books, which is an incredible, so I would say it's in between. There's like the university presses that publish serious nonfiction, either like they used to do the so-called monographs, which is kind of like a dissertation, or they have their trade press side for serious nonfiction. Then their houses like Basic, which does serious nonfiction. It's not technically peer review, but it's at the highest level as well. And then you get to other publishers like mine, Viking, which is part of Penguin Random House, which also does serious nonfiction, but also does other sort of like mass market and, self-help, but all the other kinds of fun stuff that you can get. So if you're like inside of a publishing house, whether it was when you were at Yale Press or Basic or just what you know generally, do people inside the house all know about, as soon as a book is acquired, do you find out, or do you actually does the publicity side get consulted even in the process before the decision is made to buy a book?
Yeah, and it changes from house to house, even imprint to imprint within, some of these larger corporate companies now. Sometimes is really the answer. I think notably at a university press, because of the peer review process, there's not always as much emphasis on, say, what the publicity and marketing side can contribute. That's not to say that there isn't a voice in the room for either or both of publicity and marketing when projects are being acquired. It's just that we tend to use the term editorially driven publishing houses, and that's largely the same, or rather that applies to both a university press or somewhere like Basic. We're really looking for, like you said, authors who are experts in their field, whether they be researchers, intellectuals, journalists, wherever the big ideas are is what we're chasing.
And when it comes, like, I know, authors can say they're going to turn a book in a year, and maybe they drag their feet. I'm not talking about myself, Jill, necessarily.
Never.
But never. But I'm wondering, at some point when there's and again, I'm gonna take university presses off the table, because even the manuscript's got to go through peer review, and that takes an extra, who knows, amount of time. So at some point, the main editor who's working with the author on the book, has enough of a manuscript in hand that they can kind of set a publication date. Is that the date when publicity starts making the plan? Or, when does, and I get confused between sales and publicity. What are the differences, and when does your work begin?
Right. Let me start unpacking sales versus publicity, since publicity is what I do every day on a daily basis. We work primarily with reaching out to external media, places like the New York Times, the Atlantic, Washington Post, NPR, CBS, those kinds of broadcasts, online and print outlets. We're really the author's biggest cheerleader when it comes to setting up that kind of coverage. And it happens, or it starts to happen, typically for serious nonfiction, I would say on average about 4 to up to about 6 or 7 months in advance of a publication date.
Okay.
So by the time that we get involved as publicists, typically the manuscript is already in, usually by contract. So not too much slippage.
Shush.
It does happen.
Don't judge me.
But then, yes, as soon as the manuscript is in, that's when our production team, starts fitting it for pages that are, even uncorrected. We print and bind those up in what we call galleys, which are
advanced review copies, right?
Exactly, advanced review copies, ARC. And those are really a publicist's main currency, in performing outreach for the book. It's being able to show something for it. Again, whether that's a bound copy or the PDF. We've been working and in contact with the author to develop the messaging for the book. Getting across those key points and takeaways that do make it so distinct, because we are looking for interventions into what people already know, or major contributions to the literature that's already out there. It's not terribly different from a university press in that way, just that we're not as closely tied to the peer review process.
And that's the publicity side. What is the sales?
Yep.
Sales, is that more like with the bookstores and stuff?
Yeah, sales tend to deal more with accounts, and those can range from certainly independent bookstores, wholesale accounts, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and the sales teams are not usually imprint specific. They tend to serve the larger company. Again, those are all of various sizes, whether it's an independent press, university press, corporate publisher. Their miraculous job is to know just about every individual copy of a book that they've been able to sell into a store, what worked, what didn't work, what buyers what buyers and store owners see working most in their displays, what Amazon's algorithm is pushing.
Wow.
They're the ones who are really able to be on top of the marketplace for books writ large.
And I'm going to switch back to Jill for a second, but I'm curious how the mix has shifted over the years between the hardcover or the paperback, which usually comes out a year later, but between the first issue, let's say the hardcover versus the ebook versus Audible. How are those numbers moving around in terms of share of sales?
Well, Ivan can probably answer this too. I think that right now we're seeing really good numbers for audio. More and more people are reading by audio. The disabled community has really embraced it. Busy people enjoy it. That's how I do most of my pleasure reading.
I love when there's an audio. When I have a new book, I can't, for the podcast, I have to actually read it. But when it's an older book, I do both. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great. Unfortunately, we are seeing mass market kind of disappear.
What do you mean by that word, mass market?
That is like the books that you see at Costco. I mean, it's hard to explain what they...
Can any book, so do all books at one point become mass market, or are you born a mass market book?
No, yeah, you're usually born a mass market, but a lot of books either, they'll decide, okay, this needs to be a hardcover book, and then we'll do the second release, which would be a trade paperback. But a lot of books are coming out directly into paperback now, because just price point,
Right.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, this
Neil
is
Gaiman.
an example of
Okay.
Neil Gaiman's American Gods, but this is one of the very few mass market books that I have. I am definitely not much of a mass market reader.
So is the person who's selling more books than God, Colleen Hoover, is she mass market, would you say?
No, she is a variety, and it doesn't matter what she comes out with. Her readers are going to buy it. Yeah.
She's a phenomenon.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just back up then, and I want to ask, I never thought about this because we're talking about nonfiction, but there's all kinds of nonfiction. You would put a recipe book would be considered nonfiction, right? Like okay. So when I say things like serious nonfiction or nonfiction, there's like nonfiction related to like law or politics or memoir or history. There's no what would you call that? Like there's no specific category for that, right? But that would not be mass market, you're saying.
It depends. And I think, maybe, and Ivan can probably answer this too. I've always kind of wanted to sit in on a sales meeting because I feel like that would be the coolest experience, and really the entire house gets together and, puts an entire week into it, as far as I can tell. Like it's a huge event.
Are they twice a year or 4 times a year? Maybe 4 times a year, the sales meetings, do you think?
It varies, correct, Ivan?
Yeah, it varies depending on how many publishing seasons the house has, usually somewhere between 2 and 3.
Okay, got you.
But I would love to sit in on one of those and just see what they do. But I think at that point, they're deciding how they're going to publish the book.
And I'm going to back to you in a second, Ivan. And sometimes it's just really timing. Like when Dahlia Lithwick's book, Lady Justice, came out. First of all, anything she writes, she's going to have an audience. But her book happened to come out, and she had to rewrite it right when the Supreme Court officially overturned Roe v. Wade with Dobbs. So she had to rewrite the beginning, which kind of catapulted this to different. Is that the right thing? To a different level here. Sort of any thoughts on how what's going on in the world affects people in that sales meeting? You can't always predict what's going to happen. In fact, they ran out of copies of that book and had to do more printings because they didn't expect those kinds of sales.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Dahlia is a superstar, but I think with publishing, I don't want to misquote anybody, because I think it was Jonathan Karp when he was still the publisher of 12 books, but he wrote an article, sort of describing publishing as a casino.
Uh-huh.
And honestly, it is. Publishers pay or pay authors advances for their books. Sort of make predictions, again, based on, information that we have about, obviously, again, the contents of the book.
It's pretty cool. I mean, I think that, Jill, that happens in all publishing houses where you hear you can call it a casino or you can call it a hits business, right? There can be, I get the sense that, I guess a book can fail, but the reality is most nonfiction books do okay. And then there are some superstar books that just catch fire.
And a lot of it is timing, and a lot of it is, wow, lightning struck, There are a lot of fiction authors right now who are doing really well with TikTok simply because they are using that platform to be able to.
So I don't can you? I know we're still talking about sales, and I'm gonna go back to the writing process, but it surprises me that TikTok would be a valuable. I mean, it is. We find out. I think Colleen Hoover uses it, but like I would think that people who are on TikTok wouldn't necessarily be readers. They might be more visually. And sort of music and movie inclined. And that, so can you explain why that works, selling books on TikTok?
The way that it's kind of segued into books is through Book Talk. And so people will make videos about their favorite books. They'll talk about their favorite, romance tropes. Like, oh, we are loving the grumpy sunshine trope right now. And that, and it's, or they'll read little passages from their books, or it's all
so it's a little bit fandom oriented then.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense to me.
And it's very visual still.
Okay, so it's interesting. I deliberately, people who are listening might wonder, why is she talking about sales and marketing? I want to be a writer, and I need to sort of immerse in research and writing and big ideas. And the reason why I decided to lead with this is because very often writers don't think about this at all. And this is why you have an agent and a publishing house, so they can worry about this stuff as you work on your writing. But the reality is, before you even get your book deal, so that you can get that advance and you can sort of sit down and dig into meeting those deadlines, someone has to, and it's not you, get in a room and decide you are worth the investment. So this is, we still live in capitalism. That's still happening.
Right.
And I think
book business is a business.
It's a business, right? Because any one of us could set up a Substack or tweet out, sentence by sentence, a book. And, just people might really love it. You don't have to get paid for it either. But if you're asking someone to invest in you and give you the money that you need to take the time off or pay your bills, or pay childcare, whatever you need to do, or a research assistant. If you're asking someone to invest in you, you have to understand their side of what's going on, right?
And that's why the book proposal is so crucial for nonfiction, because it sells the author as much as it sells the project.
So this is what I want to ask you about. There are, every person out there who wants to write something has ideas, has opinions, and they may know a lot about a topic. But sometimes they, regardless of what they know or how well they write, one of the things that the agent and publisher is thinking about is what you talked about, which is they're selling themselves. They have to have what we call, again, this is going to sound markety, but it's like a platform. It's another way of saying being an expert or being well-known, being trustworthy on a topic. And not that you can't expand, but can you talk a little bit about that? Because you're thinking about that as you're working on the proposal. You like a person, but you need to prove to the publishing house that they have the kind of name and recognition or platform where readers are going to choose their book on a shelf or off of Amazon because it's not, that you want to hear from that person as opposed to just Googling the information themselves or something.
Right. Especially in a world of Google, it's not just this idea that you have, but it's also, why are you the author to talk about this? And what kind of expertise do you bring from the to the table? And then how can you, as the author, promote it when the time comes? I have had several passes that, I've liked the project, but at the end of the day, I didn't think that the author had a large enough platform to be able to.
So I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or have you talk about the particular author, but can a person build their platform and their expertise? What does that look like for even the person who you are working with on a first or second book, or someone who's still working on the proposal? Two things. One, how do you build your expertise or build your platform, your credibility? And also, how do you shape the proposal to better fit what you're known for as opposed to something that might be a little far afield?
I think that Ivan can absolutely weigh in here because he's part of the judging process. But to start it off, you can absolutely build your platform. Social media is a good way to do it. Getting yourself out there on podcasts and, submitting for op-eds for, LA Times, New York Times. Absolutely, you can get yourself out there.
Do you have thoughts on that, Ivan?
Yeah, a lot of the things that we're looking for in the beginning are the kinds of opportunities that I set up as a publicist. So, just like Jill said, interviews, op-eds. We do take note of people who have developed themselves on social media and have, substantially large and or engaged followings. Whatever the platform may be, as long as it's speaking to the audience that we would expect to buy that author's book.
And on this, you talk about being editorial, a place like Basic is editorially driven. So are obviously some, I absolutely love my editor. I've loved every editor I've had. I love my current editor too. And she's obviously very, focused on, the content. Obviously editors are editorially driven too. But they're employed by someone who, is handing money to an author. So they've got to also make sure you can sell things. In terms of that, you mentioned something earlier, Ivan, about, whether it's an academic press or, a serious nonfiction publisher looking for making a contribution to the discourse, to the particular field, to opening up new lines of thought, new discovering new information, different perspective. I'm using all these words to suggest something being novel. Who judges that? I mean, you've got to have a lot of smart, well-read people inside the publishing house to know that this has or hasn't been done before. I mean, sometimes it's the job of the proposal to say that, but then after you kind of know that, how do you get the feeling, or how does a publishing house get the feeling that this is going to be the kind of, at the outset, not during the editorial process, because that's kind of up to the editor who has to either pull the plug or not at some point. But how do you at the outset get the feeling that this is going to be something to make that kind of contribution?
Yeah, and it's funny that you use the word novel because we are exactly the opposite of, say, a fiction house.
Exactly.
We're not publishing celebrities, not only in very rare cases, very specific memoirs or subjects relating to poetry. We rely on, much like any other part of the entertainment industry, the people who are tending to these projects have some interest in the subjects, and so we all have our own respective interests, but we like to be up to date and well read on what is succeeding, what's working across publishing or book publishing generally. Publishers rely on what we call comp titles or comparative titles, looking at the track record of a similar book, but obviously different. It's again, going back to the casino metaphor, it's what makes publishing so difficult. There are more unique books than I think any other industry. Mm-hmm. I was even just looking at some very disturbing, in some ways, statistics before, because I think it's somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million new books published each year in a traditional format, and the numbers for self-publishing books have just spiked to about 2 million.
And that doesn't even include ChatGPT, probably.
Oh, well,
sorry.
That would be a nightmare.
It already is, right? I mean,
yeah, but really, with 3 million new books coming out every year,
right?
I can't really say that people are reading much more. It's a really difficult thing because a lot of what we're competing for these days isn't actually money; it's time.
Right. And that's where the Audible kind of, or the audiobook helps, because you can go on a walk. Like if I'm listening to a book, I'm, hours and hours, maybe it's at 1.25 or 1.3 at some point, doing the dishes, doing everything I need to do. That would have been time. Maybe I'd just be thinking about stuff, which I probably should be doing. But without that, people couldn't read as much, I think, because people can't just sit down all day. It's a lot. But even so, a million is kind of, or 3 million is ridiculous. I want to ask you about, Ivan, I've always heard about these outside publicists, right? Because whenever there's an announcement that a book has been sold, somebody approaches you. If you're an author, people try to pitch you in doing that. And I always thought, if I'm working with a publishing house, that's their job and they can tell me what I should do, or I'll help, pitch the book when it's done. But there are people who hire an independent publicist. What is that? Is that like, it feels weird to me because at first it feels like, do you not trust the publishing house? Or does a publishing house actually appreciate that an author has an independent assistant? And how do you work together with that outside publicist, sorry?
Yeah, I think probably the easiest way to explain it is that I am a book publicist. It is an in-house book publicist, which means it is a very specific role, obviously working for the publisher and getting coverage for the book. Now, obviously, the author comes with that, and we collaborate with the author, work with the author. But the distinction I'm making is that, I'm not, say, a speaking agent. I'm not necessarily, someone to, well, certainly in traditional publicity departments, I'm not going to be the one necessarily to help you amplify your social media platform. And so it's really important, I think, for authors to have sort of a vision and a goal in mind. As an in-house publicist, I am going to be absolutely relentless in terms of getting you and the book covered wherever I can. That is my job. But much as the casino of publishing exists, so does that of media coverage.
That's so true. Right.
Can't control what the New York Times reviews, can't control who they interview on NPR. We just do our absolute utmost to make it happen.
That's really helpful. I hadn't thought of it that way, and that it really makes that more clear. Let's go back to the after the book has been sold to the publishing house, and the author has a year or 18 months or 3 months or whatever it is to write the book. What is the role at that point of the agent in that process, Jill? And what have you seen, for people who are excited about doing this but nervous about the writing process? Do people need to quit their day jobs? Have you ever seen anyone have a day job and still write a book? What have you seen? What kind of styles of work? Do some people give you or give the editor a chapter at a time? I'm just curious about what you see in terms of actually like getting the book thought through, written and edited and copy edited and all that stuff.
Yes, well, one of the things that I do tell most of my authors is don't quit your day job. I mean, as much as we would love for you to work full time on writing, it's just often not a way to go, especially with now that books are being paid out in quarters or in fourths generally. So you're just getting chunks of your advance as you go. But and the process really varies depending on the writer.
Let me just back up. So chunks of your advance, you're usually on signing, you get a quarter of it. When you turn the manuscript in and it's approved, usually you get a quarter of it. You get another quarter when it publishes, and maybe the final piece after the paperback. I'm just using general, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
That's usually how it goes. And sometimes, there's some who are still doing it in 2s and some who are doing it in 3s, but it's generally the publishers are hanging on to that money as long as they can.
I think it makes sense in defense, even though I'm a writer, in defense of the publisher, it's sort of like building a house. You wouldn't pay the builder for the whole process up front.
Right.
I mean, you have a little incentive.
Yes. Well, we'd like to front load that first payment if we can, so that.
Thank you, Jill. But I'm just wearing many hats here.
But then the editorial process really depends on the editor and the author. A lot of my authors will just go away and we'll see you later, and we'll see you, in a year when I'll turn in. But most, I would say, are working in tandem with their editor and are turning in little by little and discussing. And of course, we are always here. So a lot of times, as it does happen, life gets in the way, and sometimes they'll need more time. And so the agent will check in and make sure that we can get a little extra time and extend the deadline. We want to just be working with the three of us, the agent, editor, and author, so that we can make sure that everyone's on the same page. We don't have to move the publication date or things like that.
So for me, I just wanted to write books, and because I am an academic, it sort of fits nicely into what I do, and so on. I have more summers off, and my goal is always hoping that my ideas get out there and maybe make a difference. And I care about sales because it means I can write another book, and I feel guilty if I'm not going to, if someone is taking a chance on me. You talk about the casino, I want to do well for the people who believed in me. There are other people who the purpose of writing books, sometimes it's not, obviously they care about sales or they care about the ideas out there, but they're actually trying to build like a consulting career or a speaking career and so on. What do you think that mix is? What in terms of the people who are writers, who do you of people that you see, either Ivan or Jill or both, the people that write books, do they continue to write books? Are you seeing more of them or a mixture of them using that as a platform for consulting or some other gig in this nonfiction space? Ivan, do you want to start?
Yeah, I have really dedicated myself for the vast majority of my career working with, well, not only academics, but experts generally. And there are people who have a purpose to what they're writing. The book is important to them. The message is important to them. The idea and the wider world knowing about it. That's where, the drive and the passion comes from. Mm-hmm. Do you occasionally, because books are, an item, increasingly, something that celebrities do, of course. There is a perception of in order to be taken seriously, or in order to advance my platform generally, well, then I have to be able to point to that book that I wrote. It happens. And it's certainly yet another one of the, millions of books that are published every year. It's really hard to draw those lines of character unless we're talking about everything in the book world, an individual title by title basis.
Yep, that makes sense. Jill, do you have thoughts
I don't
on that?
see that quite as often, I think. It feels like the tail wagging the dog. For us, ideally, we will be signing an author for their life of their, writing career. And so what we try to do is...
Jill, you mean the part about how all the puppies that descend from my dog have to go to Sandra Dijkstra Literary Agency? Everyone signs that? Too?
Well, the tail wagging the dog in this particular instance is for instance, if I had an author...
I meant about the contract for life part. All my future puppies and firstborn children. You're taking all of those, right?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
But we, there are authors who do want to, they'd be like a public speaker who, I'm doing all these events. I really should have a book that I can sell at my event. I think that would be an instance like that, but we don't see that quite as often. It's really like I have I have something to say. I have an important topic that I want to talk about, and I want to change some minds on it. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm talking to an author, I'm talking about their particular book, but I'm also talking about their next book with them before we even sell that first book. So it's more about the project and not the project driving them.
Okay, so before we get into the kind of final minutes and talk about inspiration, over the years, how many authors do you think you've represented, Jill? Is it hundreds? Do did you know tens
Oh
of
gosh,
thousands?
it's very, we have our set bunch of authors, but like for instance, Sandy has been, we were pretty much the first West Coast literary agency, and Sandy's been doing this for over 40 years. So
Wow.
she has authors who, like Lillian Faderman, who's been writing for 40 years. So
Oh, I love her. I feel like I know. I know I've read one of her.
Woman is her new one out of Yale. You should definitely have her on your
Wait,
show.
she wrote. Gosh, she wrote a book about. Darn it! I know that I read this for an American intellectual history class, a book of hers, and now I need to look it up. Okay, yes, connect me. I would love to
Absolutely.
speak with her. and so Ivan, you have seen. And how many books does, for example, Basic publish a year?
We do about 60 hardcover a year, and so that's pretty small in the grander scheme of the publishing world. But I think we all want a chance to be able to work with authors and certainly our in-house collaborators over and over again. Obviously I wouldn't be here otherwise if developing a relationship with authors wasn't important to me. That was 9 years ago that I was working on your book, Jen. And here I am today.
I love that book so much. Not that I don't like Big Dirty Money, but there's something I think really special about Other People's Houses. But that's,
Oh, well.
I like the narrative in that book so much. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, no, not that I need to fluff your ego. It just came at such a critical time after the recession. But relationships do change. Authors may get a new agent. They may have a new idea that isn't necessarily the best fit for the same publishing house.
Right.
A lot of people in our area tend to go, back and forth between, say, a university press or somewhere like Basic or even Crown.
Well, you look at someone like Michael Lewis. I mean, who hasn't published one of his books? The guy writes a book a year, right? You guys haven't? Oh, sorry. Ivy.
Oh, well, no, certainly, but isn't he?
But he
aren't all of his books Norton?
Are they all Norton?
I think.
Oh, you're right. Maybe he's always Norton. You know what I'm thinking of? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, he's always Norton, and I believe he still has the same publicist that I met many years ago. I believe so.
I didn't realize that. I didn't realize he was always Norton. Then maybe I'm thinking of Jared Diamond. I don't know. Okay. I really like that. Now I like Michael Lewis even more that he stayed with Norton. I'm not insulting my publisher at all, but it's nice to see someone that kind of loyalty because Norton is also employee owned as far as I know.
Right. And my sense is that it's definitely the kind of atmosphere and publishing atmosphere that they want to generate. Mm-hmm. So people who have been at Norton, by and large, to my knowledge, many have been there for a long time, or perhaps would stay longer than the higher turnover rates you might find at other in-house publishers.
Okay, so, and I want to say this, I know that, all of us have our loyalties, like I'm loyal to, I love my publisher, Viking, and I love Yale Press, who's published me. I also love Basic, because I love all the books that you write, and Norton's great, too. So I'm curious, it sounds like there are certain publishing houses that are known to publish serious nonfiction. Besides, so like I would say, university presses are always a good choice, and some editors want to do the trade side more than others, whole bunch of them. But in terms of the non-university press, I think of Basic, I think of Norton, I think of Viking. Who else? What are the other imprints or publishers, Jill, that you think of when you think of serious nonfiction?
Penguin.
Crown, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
What about Farrar, Straus, Giroux?
Yep,
Wait,
FSG.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Beacon Press.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, there's someone else I'm thinking of. Something in New York. What is it called? Published Mary Trump's second book, and I'm forgetting the name of it.
St. Martin's Press?
St. Martin's Press. That's another example. I'm just saying these names for people who are wondering. And the thing is, you can't, if you want to do, obviously I think Jill Marr is great, and, I'll put her information in the show notes, but, there are, what you want to do, what I always think of, instead of getting one of those giant books or Googling online who would be a good agent, what you do is you read a book that you really like and you look in the acknowledgments, whether that's online, if you're reading, if you can look on, search online if that's easy for you, or just open the damn book, the hardcover of the book or the paperback, and see who they thanked. And, if there's a book that you love and they thank their agent, then that's someone to reach out to, right? Okay, so let me ask this question, Jill. If someone's going to query you as opposed to you finding them, I mean, you mentioned that there's that hashtag. Can you tell me that hashtag again? That people.
It's hashtag MSWL.
So you can kind of MSWL. You can kind of, if you are looking for who puts the MSWL manuscript wish list. Is it the writer who puts that out, or is it is it an agent who puts those out, or both?
Both. Everybody does. It's just there's an organization that actually organizes it, and we have like a website that you can go to for agents and editors who do that hashtag.
So you can kind of try to see if anyone notices you. The other thing you can do is actually reach out by email to one of these agents who's written a book, who's represented an author that you like. Be careful, though. I mean, if you're, reaching out to someone who's like Stephen King's agent and saying that you really like the way I know he doesn't write. He actually sometimes does nonfiction. If you're, someone who maybe exclusively or who represents someone who's sold 100 million books or whatever it is, maybe not be the place to start. But Jill, if you got someone reached out to you or any of the other agents at your house or other places, what's the best way to make a blind query like that?
I always tell people to look at the websites. Every agency has a website now, and we have an entire page that's devoted to how to reach out to us. And almost all of us are doing the Query Manager these days. So you would go through Query Manager, and it kind of makes you give a few things that we would love to see just in the basic query.
And is there a link to the Query Manager on your website, or is that somewhere else?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is great. That's more efficient than having to open and close and respond to a bunch of emails. Okay, great. So final thoughts from both of you about advice you would give to people, who are getting ready, summer's starting, they're going to have a little more time, and they'd like to start getting ready to reach out to an agent or to start working on their own proposal. Starting with you, Ivan.
Oh, well.
Actually, I shouldn't ask you that. I should ask Jill that question. I'm going to ask you about publicity.
Yeah,
I'm going to come back to you in a second.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not your job.
I have a really great answer to this, too. So I have this editor at Yale who is brilliant, and he... So I actually wrote this down, and I have it nearby all the time because I feel like it's something that you should keep in mind when you're putting together your book project. So it is, how do you want to change the understanding of the subject, and how might we use that?
Was that
I
Seth?
love that.
No, it was Bill.
Oh, because I've heard Bill. I love Bill Frucht. He's an amazing editor. He edited other people's houses. I think he told me once what you're supposed to do is write out a rant, as if you're at out at a party and you're just drinking and you're ranting. Write your rant out first, and the next morning look at that rant, and that's what your objective
and pull
is.
The brilliance out. Yes, yes, I love it.
Okay, so that's great advice. And Ivan, let's say you've gone through all of this agony, months and months of work. You can't believe, you're so proud of yourself. You've cried. You've thought you've never going to get it done. And now you actually believe the book may be on the shelf one day. Are you done? Or what do you need to start thinking about at this point? Again, after you've done all the careful copy editing and stuff, and you think, okay, I've got 4 months. The thing has gone to press. Can I now nap? What do you think people need to be thinking about?
Yeah, and look, the range of styles and approaches runs the gamut. As some authors, I think, once they've turned in their manuscript, they'll help a little bit with marketing and publicity, but then just sort of not worry too much about it. What they were really after is making sure that the book is out there between 2 covers. And then you have people who are, looking to advance their own platforms, obviously, contribute to the success of the book, but whether that's, back to platform building, whether that's on social media whether that is writing op-eds, not ones related to the subject of your book that's about to come out, but making sure that your voice is out there, it's being heard, you're a name.
Why not? Because you don't want to give away the book yet? Is that why?
Exactly. If media outlets, look to what I'm conveying to them as book news, they want to be able to break the news. So, if a new idea is coming up, your book is coming out, let's say, in the fall, September, October.
Yep.
Writing an op-ed right now on the subject of your book is not going to be helpful when I'm trying to get them to cover your book in the fall when it's available for purchase.
Oh, I would never have known that. That's so interesting. It's really important.
Book adjacent is always good.
Book adjacent is good, but hopefully even if you have just, other tricks in your wheelhouse, other subjects or angles and perspectives to approach it, it's good to get your name out there, but not in a way that's going to compromise what is ultimately about to be delivered anyway.
So interesting. Okay, so anything I didn't ask either of you, and also how should people find you unless you don't want to be found? Jill.
Definitely go to our website, the Sandra Dijkstra Literary Agency website. We're all there.
And anything that I left out that you want to say, Jill?
Oh, gosh. Well, this is a conversation that could go on for hours and hours, truly. But I feel like we covered the high points.
Awesome. And you, Ivan, how do we find you, and what did I leave out?
ivanlett.com. That has links to social media as well, a little bit of my own writing. A shame, Jill, that you don't represent poetry. I'm just in the final stages of it's written. I'm just reorganizing and lightly editing a collection that I hope to start shopping around as soon as May.
Never say never.
Never say never. I just want to make sure that I don't leave this out of the conversation because it is so important that we have sessions like these and talk about them, because publishing is so very complicated. I mean, I didn't even get to, the side of sales and basically how Amazon has hijacked the entirety of the book industry over the last quarter century. I don't want to be here to discourage anybody from the process or, the action and passion of writing a book. Just because it's complicated and difficult to see, maybe dream results. Not everyone is going to sell as many copies of a book as Michelle Obama or Prince Harry. But if you're doing what you're doing because you have something to say, then there is a home for your book. It's going to take a lot of work to find someone who believes in you, but once you do, like an agent like Jill, they bring you in and set you up with an editor who believes in you, publicist who believes in you, and we all do everything that we can to make sure that publishing is a success.
I feel like I'm crying right now.
That
was such a beautiful...
It takes a village.
It was so beautiful because I love that last thing, and I hope it's not lost on anybody. These are relationships. Everyone talks about a writer writing alone, and a lot of the stuff is alone, sure. But your ideas are kind of your friends, and your books that you read are. But most importantly, you are part of a team. And ultimately, what gets produced, it's almost like alchemy. I mean, it's amazing to me sometimes when I'm writing, like, where did that come from? And it came from all the love and support that people provide toward this dream. And I truly believe people who are writers really can't quit being writers. And the only question is, are they going to take the time and take the space, and do they have the opportunity where people will care about them and love their ideas enough to help them nurture that? And it's really a little bit of a miracle that we still can do this in this day and age. So I want to thank you both for being here, for the contributions you make to writers and to books and to ideas. Again, just thank you for everything you do. Look forward to working with you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Love it.
So that was amazing. And just at the end, we started getting into, the really hot stuff about what exactly Amazon has done to the publishing industry. I think that is worthy of a whole new episode, maybe even one about antitrust law. So I'm hoping in the future to return to that topic. And when I do, I know we will be spilling a lot of tea. I'll be back next week with another show as we continue to explore the writing process and the nonfiction world together. Let us know what you think. Send an email to bookedup@politicon.com. You can also write to me at bookedup at P.O. Box 147, Northampton, Massachusetts 01061. To keep up with the show and our featured authors, follow Booked Up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And please give Booked Up a 5-star review. It really will help people find the podcast. Thank you for listening.